like I had this identity crisis and I didn't know who I was anymore because I'm such a people pleaser by nature. So I felt like everyone that I was around, I was constantly trying to reinvent myself so they'd be happy with me. I didn't want them to leave or be, mad with me. And I realized that that was not a sustainable way to live.
Hey guys, it's Mindi Linscombe, your host of the Something New Show, and we are back in the studio today to learn how to live a life worth celebrating. And I have a friend of mine here, Rachel Earp, all the way from Fort Myers, Florida. Thank you for joining us today.
Oh my gosh.
And we both didn't even talk about it, and we wore blue, which is so cool. I love it.
That.
Let me read a little bit about you to our listeners so they get just a sneak peek into your life. Rachel is a former teacher and co-founder of 2 national companies with her husband, Earp Enterprises and Earpware, which we'll talk about those businesses soon. She was homeschooled and sheltered and overcame a lot of struggles to become who she is today. Now she's a wife and a mom of 2 little boys, one with Down syndrome, and she has published a book called Gentle Forbearance and a podcast called Heels, Handbags, and Hustle, which are both platforms that have allowed her to pursue her greatest joy, which is connecting with other like-minded high achievers. She's passionate about encouraging women to live with purpose, dignity, and fulfillment. And I just think, wow, I don't even know how old you are, but you're young and you have accomplished a lot. You just told me that Earp Enterprises is 14 years old. Your Earpware is 3 years old. So to be such a young CEO and to have overcome so much, I've had children with special needs. I can relate on so many levels of what the grind must feel like. And with your podcast being 4 years in, most people quit a podcast after 7 episodes. It's proven that to be. So I'm like, girl, if you have lasted 4 years and all the years in business, still married, still love your kids. And I'm like, you're smiling today. So that's a lot. I mean, when you look back at, let's just start with entrepreneurship. When you look back at the 14 years of entrepreneurship, what do you feel like are the hardest things that when you're like, oh my gosh, I wish I would have known, but maybe ignorance was bliss. And maybe if you would have known, I always tell people that if I would have known some of the things, I maybe wouldn't have started my business. Yeah. So I'm glad I didn't. But what are the things that you're like, I look back and these were the hardest years? Like, what were those things that were maybe, and tell us what your companies do to lead into it maybe.
Okay, sure. Well, our first company we started, Earp Enterprises, at our dining room table. My husband is a visionary and very entrepreneurial, has been doing sales since he was 9 years old, delivering papers door to door. My background is completely different. I'm a former preschool teacher, very laid back. My grandfather and my father was pastors of a small country church, and I'm from basically like the cornfields of Indiana, where it's just beautiful sunsets, lots of trains, all of that. So a very quiet life. So for me, entrepreneurship was very foreign. My dad was a blue-collar worker. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. So I would say, essentially not prepared for a lot of the grind and the burning the candle at both ends, some of the stressors that come with starting a new company and really not knowing what you're doing, because we have skills, we have passions, things that we're really good at, but running a company successfully is completely different. And, at first you're wearing all the hats. So, you're booking all of your appointments, your marketing, you're learning how to gather leads and figure out how to sustain and scale your company. And there's a lot of things that in retrospect, gosh, I wish we would have had like a little tribe with us at the time, but it was just me and my husband completely. We didn't have
like winging it.
Yeah.
No mentor, no, hey, this is how you, yeah.
Yeah. So we didn't have any of that, So I look at now recently my husband started moving into coaching, and I see, just being able to relate to what people are going through when they first started and kind of mentoring them through that process. Like I can only imagine having that when we first started, how that would have alleviated so many hiccups and, the mistakes that you make and, the times that we thought we were doing things the way we should have, and then something massive happened and we had to start all over, So yeah, there's a lot of
And
emotions.
did you base your company out of Indiana, or did you never live as a married couple in Indiana?
We did not.
Okay.
No, I actually lived there for 22 years, and when I married my husband, we moved to Pennsylvania, or he was already, and he's originally from Philly. So big city boy, like with quite street
How
smarts.
did you meet
like,
him?
We actually met through my book that I had published, and at the time I was finishing up my degree to be a teacher, and one of the things I had to do was open a social media and learn communications, which was kind of more of a forbidden thing in my background, like that kind of world. So we met through there and started chatting. We had totally an online, you've got mail type relationship, started completely as friends. We were not romantically interested. I had never even dated before. Very, like I said, very conservative background.
But you started a social media account to promote your book.
To pass this class.
Oh, okay.
Just so I could pass this
were you
class.
writing the book during college?
Yeah. I wrote the book when I was 18, so my book was already out into the world. It was published when I was 19 and a half, like almost 20.
With a publisher or self-published?
I did a boutique publisher
Okay.
at the time. Sent it in for them to see. I didn't even think they would accept it. It was one of those things where I was like, I don't know if I should do this, but I just love writing so much. So I was so happy when they offered me a contract and they published it, and I did book signings. And it was so fun.
What was the book about?
It's a historical fiction book set in the 1920s in Iowa, actually. And it's so funny because I used to get like mail and emails and stuff that the publishing company would forward me from my readers all over. And they always said, I feel like we know the author. And it's so funny because when you write, sometimes it's easy for your own personality and things that you're struggling with and your, misgivings or, just all the things just creep into your writing. And I didn't even realize it at the time. But my husband bought the book for his mom and his sister. And he was just so complimentary. He was a brand new Christian at the time, so on fire for God, and leading youth groups at Philadelphia Christian Center, which is a big international church there. And I was so drawn to his zealousness. I grew up very, everything was very, conservative, and I was from birth basically learned about God and all of the things. So I was so drawn to that. And so we used to have Bible studies over the phone. And I told him one time, and I said, I really hope God brings you a really special wife because you have encouraged me so much, not thinking it would be me at all. Because I was living in Indiana, he was living in Pennsylvania. We were worlds different. My parents were not exactly, thrilled with any type of relationship like that. So we had a bumpy start when we first got married. We didn't get to have a wedding or anything like that.
So that's why.
So
that's why.
Yeah, our families were not very
supportive.
And God has done so much. That's like another story for another episode.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. But God has done so much restoration, and it was hard. It was very hard. But we knew we were supposed to be together. So we had a very whirlwind when we met for the first time. It was at a coffee shop. He drove all the way from Pennsylvania to meet me. And when I saw him, I was like, I couldn't believe how I felt. Like I had always thought of him as like a brother. And I realized very quickly, like, I really love him and I really care about him. And so we were married about 3 months later.
Wow.
We just celebrated our 14-year anniversary, and it's been crazy.
And now parents, everybody's in relationship.
It has its ups and downs. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of water under the bridge. But God has done things that I didn't think were possible, and I'm thankful for that, But yeah, every love story is different, and that's why I just love your boutique so much and what you do, the experience that you give brides. And I literally picked flowers off the side of a road, and we went to the Justice of the Peace, and I was happy though.
I mean, that's so romantic in a way. It's like saying it's like regardless of the resistance, and it might not be family. It might be other circumstances that are resistance, distance, career, or whatever it might be. And just to say, hey, if you really feel like there's, like that confidence in your decision that this is your person, you didn't make it about the wedding. And I love weddings, obviously, but I agree with you that the marriage and the union of the right person is more of a priority than the wedding itself. So while I think it's so beautiful and celebratory and all of that, like, I mean, I get so excited when I go to weddings. I still love it.
They're so beautiful.
I know it's hard because then everyone's different and they put their own spin on it. I love it.
Yeah.
But I just say, don't focus so much on the wedding that you forget the marriage.
Yes.
And you guys were all marriage. You were like, let's focus all on the marriage and forget the wedding.
We didn't have a honeymoon. Like, we went through the McDonald's drive-thru and ate off the $1 menu. We had no money when we got.
Wow.
So, I look at, what God, I never knew or dreamed that we would be where we are today. And so all of that to say, with entrepreneurship, it has been a huge blessing for us. And God knew we would end up working together. God knew before when we were first starting and we grew close, that our hearts grew close first. We weren't physically attracted to each other at first. We didn't even know what we looked like, So for us, I'm actually thankful for that because we're friends. Like, at the end of the day, we are such close friends. We do everything together. We wouldn't have it any other way.
That's awesome. Okay, so tell us what your company does, the one that's 14 years old.
Yeah. So Earp Enterprises is a national marketing organization. We hold the contracts for life, health, and Medicare carriers. So essentially what that means is we're like a pathway for insurance agencies and agents to work independently with all of the insurance companies instead of like a captive agent with just United or Humana or one of those companies. They can broker all of the products through us.
So then people can truly get the best product for them.
Yeah. So,
and you said how many agents are in your company now?
We have over 2,000.
Wow.
We work nationally. We started in our home state of Pennsylvania. And then when we first got married, we moved to New York, and we lived in New York for a while. And just, started with 3 agents, and they would come at the end of the day and knock on our front door and drop off applications. Because back then you had to submit everything through paper, and it was such a dinosaur age. I look back at that and I'm like, wow, agents now they're so blessed, but they always showed up at dinner time too. I love to cook. Cooking is I grew up cooking because both of my grandmas, my one grandma was Mexican and taught me tamales and all of the best Mexican cooking. And then my mom's mom was from the hills of Kentucky and taught me all the Southern biscuits and gravy and fried chicken, all that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So you literally had an idea, put it together at your dining room table, had probably a lot of years with no profit at the end of maybe even good years of sales.
Correct. I actually worked while my husband started. I worked for a hospital system, and I did billing and coding for several different departments. And that is when I got pregnant, expected our first baby, and I ended up having a very complicated pregnancy. We were told that he was not going to survive. There was a hole in the placenta, and I had hemorrhaging the first several months. So I was on bed rest. I lost my position. And so finally I looked at my husband and I'm like, should I get licensed? And should we do all this? And I'm like, me help you full force, and I'll be one of your agents. And I'm not a salesperson at all. I normally run from salespeople, which I married a salesperson, which is so funny. That's probably how he got me to marry him. He sold me.
He closed the deal.
I always joke with him about that. But I ended up being one of his top agents in his entire company after I got licensed. So I would go door to door. And back then, that was a thing where you would knock door to door in neighborhoods, and I would stand there, and people would let me in, and I would help them with their Medicare. Medicare was what I loved. I love working with seniors and senior products, and I think part of that is because I was very close to my grandparents. and I love taking care of them. And now I head up all of the recruiting and the creative and the fun stuff of our companies. I got promoted every year and worked my way up to the top. Truly, I have to say, I truly worked my way up to the top, and I'm glad I did it that way.
Yeah. And you're still full-time in the business with your husband.
I am pretty much full-time. I mean, because we have a couple different companies, I spread my time between those two. And sometimes I'm more in it. Sometimes I'm able to take a break, and I need to take a break because it's a lot.
And then your other company, what does your Earpware do?
Yeah, so Earpware we originally developed to do marketing and automations and back office for all of our teams, and have agents have the access to do digital marketing, because things have changed a lot in the insurance industry, and we realized pretty quickly on we need to keep up with those trends and make sure that they can market themselves, especially after COVID. Everything went online. The carriers had to change how you submit applications, how to do face-to-face appointments. Now we do them virtually over the phone. So we wanted to create a system that would allow them to do that, and instead of having different systems for calendars, different systems for social media, and then logging into a different system for the back office and then scope of appointments, we put all of it into one, which flows so nicely, so they don't have to keep track of all of these different things, and it just streamlines everything so that they can focus on just
And I
finding
assume
clients.
it's not just for your 2,000 agents, but that any agent could use that software.
Yeah, we have all different types of industries now that we branched into. So we have roofing companies, we have salons, we have restaurants, because the automations, for people that don't want to have to do all of the things and wear all of the hats, it's so easy to just plug in. So we created different templates that we can use and drop into their systems, and then develop it more in depth, because we hired software developers so that they can actually learn, the really what they customly need, instead of it just being like a one size, here you go, and then hope it works. We really tailor it to what they need.
Wow. And so you had the two boys, and somewhere in there you thought, I'm going to start a podcast.
I did. It's so funny. It was a hobby, a passion project. I am very actually shy by nature. So I've come out of my shell a lot because my husband forced me out of my shell.
No, but I can see that, because I remember the first thing we attended together. I didn't meet you in person that time, but I wanted to, and I was on the other side of the room, and every time I tried to get over, I'd get cut off by someone, and I was like, I'm saying I could see that being your natural tendency to maybe be more introverted at first.
Yes.
But maybe once you feel like you can trust someone, or I don't know.
When I'm comfortable with someone, I have the gift of gab, as I always say.
Yeah.
But it is a struggle for me, because when I'm in front of people, it drains me a lot. So even podcasting, that was a way that it didn't drain me. It actually gave me life, so to speak. And so I found that I loved it. And my first few episodes, I didn't have anyone on my show. And then a really close friend of mine her and her husband built a chiropractic office, and we're like family. And I'm like, hey, would you come over and do an episode with me at my dining room table? And she's like, sure. So my first episode was with my best friend, and I thought, I should just do this with more people because I love this. So yeah, it's just grown organically from there, and it's
Tell me how you came up with the name. So the name again, say the name.
Heels, Handbags, and Hustle.
Heels, Handbags, and Hustle.
Sounds so materialistic. It's so funny. No, there's this picture of me when I was 3 years old. I'm in these like hot pink Oshkosh overalls.
I love Oshkosh. I haven't heard of that in so long. Okay, go ahead.
I know. So I'm in those. I have on these big sunglasses, a big strand of my mom's pearls. I'm dragging one of her purses behind, filled with coupons. Back then, coupons were a thing.
Yeah.
And was wearing her heels. And it's so funny because I look back at that picture when I was really young. I was very bold. I was not shy. I wasn't bashful. I would get up and stage, sing in churches, and my families would travel and sing from church to church. Very musical family. So I learned to play violin and sing, and
You have so many hidden talents. Oh my gosh.
yeah, it's funny looking back at it now because, I had no fear. And I guess that photo reminded me that maybe deep down in my heart that is who I am. And then things happen in life that change you, and things, circumstances, trials that you go through, fires that you go through. And sometimes, we change along the way. And we get to this point where people, you hear people ask, oh, who am I? And I remember having that epiphany and thinking, this is so ridiculous, Rachel. You know who you are. Like, you're a child of God and you're a wife and you're a mom. But I literally felt like I had this identity crisis, and I didn't know who I was anymore because I'm such a people pleaser by nature. So I felt like everyone that I was around, I was constantly trying to reinvent myself so they'd be happy with me. I didn't want them to leave or be, mad with me. And I realized that was not a sustainable way to live life.
And you were doing that in your adult life.
In my adult life. Honestly, when I hit my 30s, I can honestly say that I am more, I've overcome a lot of that. And maybe it's part of its maturity. And part of it, too, is the more that I grew in my relationship with God, the more secure I felt in Him. And I realized that I need to get everything off of me, and the focus is not all on me, but it's on how can I learn to serve Him better. And in retrospect, the more you learn to focus on those things, everything else just kind of flows naturally. You start to be more relaxed, be more yourself, and value that God created me the way that I am for a reason. Why am I trying to change and be someone that I'm not, So
that's great.
That podcast title, I wanted it to be fun, and I get a kick out of it because...
Well, and I think it's like, now that I have the imagery too, to see, hey, yeah, you you were there and you're back. Like, that's really the essentials. Like, hey, you're back to feeling that secure, confident. I'm comfortable with who I am, regardless of maybe not changing for everyone.
Yeah.
But that's okay too.
Yes.
It's like, because then my husband always says your vibe attracts your tribe. But like, I'm like, that's really catchy. But more, like, it's like, I'm more like, hey, the older you get and you start to really focus on what your mission is on earth, right? Like, why are you here? Why were you created? What are you here to get accomplished? You start to focus on that, and like, you will grab people along the way in that mission that you're supposed to support, help, or maybe be encouraged by yourself because they're a mentor to you. You just, the more you focus on that mission, it's less about you anymore. And it's like, I got to get this done because I only have how much time? Like, it's ticking, and my kids only have this much time with me, and I got to get this done. And then I feel like I've just seen the people that align with those same things, we start to really gravitate towards each other. And sure, I drop some on the way, but not because I'm trying to. I'm just on this mission, and who's on that same mission will attract and find each other. And other people might just be on different missions.
Correct.
And that's cool too.
And that's okay.
And I want to high five and celebrate that too. This episode is sponsored by Something Blue 30A. Looking for the perfect vacation spot to disconnect from everything, put your feet in the softest sand, and enjoy a fresh, renovated 2-bedroom, 2.5-bath townhouse right on the beach in my favorite place in the world? Well, 30A is situated in the panhandle of Florida, and I'd love for you to check out Something Blue 30A on Instagram and make it the perfect place for your next vacation.
That's exactly what I've come to realize. And it's like a magnetic field that is around you. And like you said, it doesn't mean you're going to attract everybody. Not everybody is meant to be in your tribe, so to speak, because we are all different. And at the end of the day, I don't want to try to fit someone in that maybe, they're not going the same direction. They're in a different stage of life or a different walk of life, and it's not always personal. It's just, you need to be with the people that you can walk together with and grow with, and that you can trust, which is super important. And, those are the kind of relationships that I pray earnestly for, and I'm thankful for the ones that I do have, and I value and treasure that, because that is priceless. That's not something that you can try to change yourself or conform or be to get that. It comes from you just being natural and being yourself and authentic, because people can see through that too, So I value that lesson. And like you said, time, we have such a short time on this earth. And I remember one night not long ago, I felt like the Lord woke me up with this scripture out of nowhere that says, take no thought for tomorrow. And I've always, I wake up and I make a joke with my husband. I'm like, well, let the rat race begin, because I'm always late. I'm always running like a rat around the house trying to get everything ready and all of our appointments. We legit have stuff scheduled, not just tomorrow, but weeks out, months out, years. You know what I mean? I take so much thought for tomorrow. And I remember pondering that one part of the verse and thinking, Lord, how do I not take any thought for tomorrow? But he says that tomorrow will take thought for the things of itself, and to consider the lilies. And I pictured the lilies in the field, how they're so beautiful, just so peaceful, and they just are there.
Yeah, they're not worrying.
They're not worrying. And I think that's what God wants from us, is he is a good father that doesn't want us to feel like we're running around like chickens with their heads cut off. There's going to be times we're going to do that. And yes, we have to plan. We have to do things. As business owners, we're planning everything out. As moms, we're planning everything out, whatever, but to be consumed with tomorrow, to where we're not being fully present, is something that I am learning that I really want to strive for more, because every breath is a gift. Every person in our life, I don't want to miss that. I don't want to miss the flowers on the side of the road while I'm driving by, because I'm freaking out. It might be
your wedding bouquet.
Yes, it might be that someone's, I might, it's so funny, because we miss so many little things.
Yeah.
And God's trying to get our attention.
Mm-hmm. And I have one kid that's just exceptionally full of wonder. And I don't know if anybody listening has someone in their life, whether it's their kid or their spouse or a friend, and it's easy to move right past wonder and be like, no, we're in a hurry, we got to leave, it's time. And every day I feel like he's just a really good slap in the face for me, because I'm like, did you see that butterfly? And I was like, oh, no, I didn't. And I have to don't be like, hurry, get in the car. I'm like, okay, let me just look over there and try to find the butterfly really fast. Yes. And then in my mind, I'm like, 10 seconds, just give him 10 seconds, Yeah. But the wonder is part of that daily living that is so important. And it's easy to miss as a busy career person, spouse. I mean, even having wonder with your spouse after 20 years of marriage and still being like, wow, that was really brilliant what you did yesterday. Or, just having moments of wonder for each other has been just something I'm also working on, and not to get used to how everything is great, but then you don't pause and go that was let's just put words to that. That actually really was great. Good on you. I'm so proud of you. Or you were brave today. Even telling your kids, I had a recent incident with my daughter had an accident, and I just keep reveling in you were so brave. I can't believe how hard that was for you, and look at how you overcame. And I want to just not forget to highlight things that we need to have more wonder about.
Absolutely. I feel that so much when you were talking about, your one child that is that way, because my youngest, with having Down syndrome, everything is slow moving for him. And it changed our world completely in so many good ways. And yes, there's a lot of challenges with that. But one of the biggest things that he has taught us is exactly that is to slow down. He celebrates the smallest wins. If he literally falls down and gets back up, he is clapping his hands and celebrating. I remember the first time that he learned to start walking. Sorry, I could feel it slipping my head. I could feel. Sorry,
you're totally fine.
Okay,
Liz can edit this. Okay. Liz can edit this.
The first time that he learned how to walk, and it was these two little steps, and then he was so excited that he just threw his hands up in the air, and then he fell backwards, and he was so happy. And even meal times, breakfast, he's so excited and celebrates getting up in the morning and having breakfast. And the little things that we felt were going to take forever, like him learning how to walk. And eating, and learning how to feed himself and hearing him say mommy and all of the things that I thought were going to take forever was such a long process, but it helped me slow down and celebrate the small wins. And that's one thing I always tell like our teams when we're training and mentoring, celebrate the small wins. They may not seem significant to someone else, but they're not, unless you have walked in someone else's shoes, they're not going to understand what you went through to get to that moment, to get to that win. And it is a big deal. And I'm a big, like, I've always loved celebrating like milestones or birthdays or like all the things, but I'm learning with myself even. Like on the way here, I was like, I can't believe this worked out. I get to be on Mindi's podcast. I am going to just be so happy and celebrate that I get to do this in my life. Like to me, it's such a big deal and such an honor to be able to be and have this conversation. And I look at all of the beautiful guests that you've had on here and I'm like, wow, like look what God has done. Like this is such an honor. And thank you, Zeke. My little one's named Zeke. Thank you for teaching me to celebrate like that.
Yeah, that's a good word. I feel like we should end with is just thinking about like, what are little things in our family members' lives, our spouses' lives, our team members' lives that we can say, hey, pause, like, good job, like, celebrate that. There's so much that we're inundated with the negative.
Yes.
And like, oh, self-help and you can do better and da-da-da. But I just imagine how much better we would all do and more performance or like just even more joy, like how much better we would feel. If we did acknowledge and stop and say, that was great, great. And so I'm encouraged just hearing, about Zeke and his celebrating the little things that like, who would you and your husband be today if it weren't for him?
Oh my gosh, it's so true. It's made us better people. And too, when you're leading teams, learning to celebrate their wins. And it may be that you've done that a long time ago and it doesn't seem like a big deal to you because you've already, conquered through that and you're at several higher levels or whatever you're thinking. When your teams or your children or, family, whatever it is, when they hit this whatever that thing is to them, that's a big deal. Make it a big deal to you too.
So good. Okay. Well, Rachel, you brought my favorite drink or your favorite drink. What is your favorite drink today that I'm trying?
Excited.
What is it called?
It's a honey lavender latte.
Oh, and it's delicious.
Yes, it's like one of those things that when I drink it, here's what I picture. I'm in my comfiest PJs on the couch, all cozy, like it's a cozy, calming drink for me. So and where I live, there's not a lot of places that will actually make it because there's not like the local coffee shops. So it's so funny because everywhere I travel, I'm like, I have to find the coffee shops.
Oh, we have the best one here.
I heard. So I actually haven't even tried it yet. So
okay, I'm excited for you to try it.
Yes.
And then, but mix it up because I think I see the top has some of the cream. So I was going to say the other thing I'd love our listeners to know is we already talked about where they can listen to your podcast, but where can people follow you online? Is it Instagram is the best place?
Yeah, Instagram's probably the biggest place that I like to hang out. And it's at I am Rachel Earp, which is so funny because my husband's Instagram is I am Dale Earp.
Okay.
So I'm like, we're doing a match. Mine was not. Mine was my nickname for the longest time. And then I realized I need to really make that sound more professional.
Make it professional. No, I've told people before that worked for me that was like, I don't even remember what it was, but like Starlight Dancer or something. I'm just making that up. But I was like, hey, you might consider having a name somewhere in your handle so that it's just a little bit more professional. And they're like, oh.
And easier for people to find you.
Yes.
But my Instagram is like all mom life. I call it a life blog. I celebrate all of the things. So you'll see a mixture of my podcast, of my children, of our businesses, travel. We do a lot of traveling. So it's just stuff that I put out there that I hope will encourage and inspire other people. It's not perfect. It's not meant to be perfect. I don't want people to think we have a perfect life because we don't. But
that's refreshing because a lot of times Instagram can be unattainable.
Yes, I feel that, and that's not my goal. So yeah, Instagram is best place to probably follow me, and then would love for people to connect with the show. And,
of course.
I always appreciate the followers, and the support means a lot. Yeah.
Definitely. Okay, well, thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
It's so
This was
awesome
so
that it
nice.
worked out. I
Yes.
mean, to be here all the way from Florida, thank you for coming to our studio. And I want all of our listeners to make sure you like this episode, make some comments. If you have questions for Rachel, you can even put them in the comments. I'd be happy to text her and get some answers. But regardless, we also love subscribers to tell your friends about the Something New show, where we are going to mentor you in all things about life and parenting, marriage, all the things. So you guys, I hope you learned something today, and you can celebrate those little wins, celebrate those wonder moments. And we hope we see you next time on the Something New show. Thanks for listening. Be sure to subscribe to the show, rate, review, and share with a friend. Also, follow The Something New Show on Instagram and Facebook. If you want a fuller experience, watch the show on YouTube to help you create a life worth celebrating.